Are you ready? Namam Vishnupadaya Krishnaprastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktitirtha Swaminithi Namine. Namaste Krishnapadaya Prabhupada Shratatmane Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhaktitirtha Namine. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishnaprastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminithi Namine. Namaste Saraswat Devam Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Shunyavad Paschate Desatarine. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaungi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Nityananda Vadutendur Vasudha Pranavallabha Janava Jivitapati Krishna Prema Prada Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Shriman Sachinandana Purvajaha Bhavonmatta Jagatrata Rakta Gaura Kalevaraha. Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Rishikesha Indriyatmane Namah Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavarga Dvaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namah Namah Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. So, the previous week we spoke on the quality of time. The focus was on verse 5 of the 4th chapter. So in the 4th chapter, Krishna is explaining and elaborating on his transcendental qualities which would allow us to recognize transcendence. So the whole purpose of gaining knowledge is to prepare for experiences. That's the whole purpose. There isn't any meaning to accumulate knowledge if one is not supposed to obtain experiences. So the whole purpose of the 4th chapter is to prepare us and help us understand what is transcendence. So when we do come in touch with transcendence, we will be able to recognize what is transcendence. So that's the whole purpose. Now, how does one experience? One starts with faith, with basic faith on the instructions of others. So there's someone who has experienced and he's sharing his or her experience, and then we take on faith in such words, and then we act upon and go through whatever they go through for us to experience the same. So this is the process of faith. So initially there is faith, and then there are positive experiences, and then faith becomes what? It becomes trust. So initially we restore faith, and from faith we move on to trust, because when we had faith in someone and it yielded fruits, it automatically transformed itself into trust. Because if past experiences are an indication of the future, we automatically understand that Since I had faith and it worked out, my faith now would also lead to results. So faith leads to trust. Right? So initially there has to be faith, and then there are experiences. And what is the primary mode of experiences? How do we gain experiences of transcendence? By service. By engaging our senses in the service of the senses of Krishna. So in the third chapter, we focused on keeping Krishna in the center. In the fourth chapter, we will focus on understanding Krishna as he reveals his transcendental nature when he is 100% in the center. So what is being seen here and what is being heard is an ideal condition where a living entity has progressed and has given up unwanted desires. Anartha nivritti. Nivritti has taken place. One is free of unwanted desires. And unwanted desires are born of contact with what? Unwanted desires are born with, due to contact with what? Material nature. So we come in touch with material nature and we automatically develop unwanted desires. Right? When we are very young, the whole concept of tutoring those days was brahmacharya. Brahmacharya was happening in the forest where the brahmacharis, at the age of 7, the Upanayanam ceremony used to happen, where the Agyopavita, the sacred third ceremony, was given by the father or arranged by the priest, and then they go away to the forest to be with the Guru so that they could learn at the age of 7. So between 7 and 25, they are with the Guru and they are completely secluded from society, where the experiences which they obtain are purely controlled and given by the Guru. So the Guru takes them from one stage to the other, gives them experiences. First of all, he cuts the bond to the body. So in brahmacharya there are austerities, right? People sleep on kusha grass. Even a king is supposed to go and gather wood. Krishna and Balaram, when they were with Sandipana Muni, they used to go to the forest to gather wood, just as anybody else would. So completely any other identity was completely cut off. There were no other identities other than wanting to be a student. There was only two identities. One was, I'm good, this is the Guru, I'm his disciple. There was only one identity, that's it. So everything else was cut off, and here they were in an environment which was completely controlled, and Siksha used to be imparted in a very organized, structured manner, and the Siksha used to be combined with experiences. So there used to be seva to the Guru, and by seva to the Guru there used to be realization of whatever was imparted. The more dedicated one was, and the more humble they were, the easier it became for them to be able to absorb whatever was required, which is quite fascinating. So realized knowledge was obtained between the age of 7 and 25. It was a controlled environment. It is quite the opposite nowadays, because we come in touch with material nature at an young age. People watch movies, right? When you watch movies, you basically are impending, or you're putting in some samskaras into the chitta. So a clean heart, when they start watching movies, they start getting ideas, because these are coming in touch with material nature. This is association. Now this is association, and this association fundamentally results in behavior, because desires develop out of such association. Right? Desires develop out of association. So when one watches a movie and they are watching a certain sequence, automatically coming in touch with matter, they develop desires because they are viewing it. You're coming in touch with matter. Right? This was not the situation. They used to come in touch with matter at the age of 25, while they used to be fully learned in all the Shastras, and they knew what the body was, they knew what the senses were, they knew exactly how to control the senses, they were very accomplished. They used to be prepared to enter into the Grihastha ashram, because there was a tremendous amount of sadhana and there was a lot of learning. So this was the basis those days. Very structured. It was a perfect program where the gurus used to take care of the children in the Gurukul, and it used to be in secluded surroundings. It used to be in the forest. Vana. So they already have a taste for the forest even before entering into sense gratification. So the ashrama of vanaprastha and sannyas. Vanaprastha essentially means that you are moving towards vana after the duties of grahastha ashram are complete. And this whole experience was already given right in the beginning, so they did not have resistance to it. They knew exactly what it was. They knew that kind of life. They developed a taste for it. You see, while being in the forest, they develop a taste for being in the forest. Because you develop a taste for being happy in the forest, and you develop a taste for sadhana, you develop a taste for austerity, being in the association of similar people. And then they are entering into grahasthashram, but the original samskaras of 25 years do not leave them. They complete the grahastha tenure of 25 years. Right? Children are born, they are raised, children become independent, and then vanaprastha. Vanaprastha starts, they know exactly what to do because they've already been trained in brahmacharya. Such a structured, precise, scientific manner of taking a soul from one stage to the other, one ashram to the other, finally without hindrance, so that they would be able to, engage in devotional service. Very structured, pakka. Right? But it's quite the opposite, because now we are exposed in advance. We are exposed at an age where we should not be exposed. In the West, it's even worse. It's hellish. It's hellish because they have organized imparting of knowledge which shouldn't be imparted at very young ages. So at the age of 9 and age of 10 and 11 in modern schools, they start imparting knowledge which is generally not required, because the mind and the body are simply not in they are not in a position to assimilate such knowledge and take decisions, because there's no maturity. But then it is being imparted prematurely. So there's a premature aging that occurs because the subtle body already transforms itself because it comes in touch with material nature. It takes away the ability to absorb knowledge, because now the senses become active. Right? It takes away the ability to gain knowledge, which is quite the opposite of what was organized. It was so well planned those days. Very perfectly planned. Very perfectly planned. But that's not the case we have at this time. So now Krishna, fundamentally, in the 3rd chapter, talks about the whole process of engaging our senses in the service of his senses, keeping him in the center, acting upon our duties and our other identities by keeping Krishna right in the center. That's given in the 3rd chapter. Now, what are the experiences? How do we understand what the experiences are going to be if Krishna is in the center? That's the 4th chapter, which is transcendence. Now, initially, we saw that he shared an extremely important fact. He said that I do not forget anything. You do. So he started talking about the ability of memory. So we spoke about it in the previous session. The ability of a living entity to remember. And we asked very clearly how many of us do remember what we did the same time in the previous week. Most of us could not, or probably none of us could remember what it is. Right? Because we are in touch with ignorance. And ignorance essentially destroys knowledge, and we don't have the ability to absorb. That is primarily the reason why we are asked to chant early in the morning, because it is in the mode of goodness, where we are able to control our mind and we are able to control the senses, we are able to focus on it. When we do activities in the mode of goodness, we have the ability to absorb. So for students to pick up a book early in the morning is the best time, because that would allow them to focus and be able to absorb knowledge. Mantras are given so that they would be able to focus. Right? This was the whole purpose. Right? So when there was in Brahmanical families, there was the giving of the Gayatri by the father to the son. And then Brahmanical life was revolving around the performance of fire sacrifices. So before sunrise, after bath, there has to be a fire sacrifice. At sunset, there would be a fire sacrifice. And then there would be three sandhis, there would be Gayatri. The Gayatri would be provided. So life was situated around mantras, and it was situated around transcendence and the ability to refrain from coming in touch with material nature, even though we are being a part of it. This training was given. Right. So what do we learn here? So it was pretty amazing to see that parents in the earlier years, they did not have a problem being away from their male, from their sons for around 15, 20 years of their time. It was pretty fascinating to see that they didn't have a problem. They didn't have a problem because everyone else was doing it. Everyone else was doing it, so they didn't have a problem. Because the samskara was already in the hearts of the parents that this is the norm. It is okay for a male son to receive the sacred thread and go away at the age of 7 to receive knowledge from the guru to a gurukul. Right. But these days, since we do not see that happening, we have resistance. We have a lot of resistance to such concepts because we don't see that happening very much. So now in the 4th chapter, last week we saw about forgetting and remembering. And why do we forget? We forget basically because we are in touch with ignorance. Whenever ignorance creeps in, we forget. Whenever passion creeps in, we forget. The mind has to be in the present for it to be able to absorb. The mind is not in the present in the mode of passion. Where is it? In the future. And where is the mind in the mode of ignorance? In the past. So does not have the ability to be in the present. And if you're not going to be in the present, you're not going to be able to absorb anything. It's not going to work out. So Krishna gives his first attribute saying, I never forget because I'm never in touch with ignorance. I'm never in touch with material nature. I am transcendental. I never forget. I have never forgotten the many, many times I've appeared because my body is transcendental. My body is not made of matter. Right? So I never forget. This is Krishna's words. He's saying, I never forget. You have forgotten, Arjun, but I never forget because my body is transcendental. So he's giving his first statement about his nature. He's saying, I'm transcendental. At any given time, I'm transcendental. No matter what activity I engage in, I'm transcendental. That is the meaning of transcendence. So that is also the meaning of Sat, which is truth. Krishna is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat, truth, essentially means that which does not change. So if Krishna were sometimes to be transcendental and sometimes to be materially engaged, that is not considered to be true. Krishna is always transcendental in all ages and he is transcendental in every kind of activity. That is a specific reason why Krishna, when he has to come in touch with material nature, he appears as Shiva. When Krishna wants to come in touch with material nature, that is Shiva. Shiva Tattva is specifically where Krishna wants to come in touch with material nature to manage material affairs. So that's why Shiva Tattva is very, very different from Jiva Tattva and also different from Vishnu Tattva. Lord Shiva is Krishna's glance on material nature. Mahavishnu glances on material nature. And his glance is fundamentally transformed into Shiva. Similarly, his consort, Sri Rama Devi, she expands into Uma, the consort of Shiva. So is there any difference between Shiva and Mahavishnu? There isn't any difference. But is there a difference? Yes, there is a difference. Inconceivably, they are one and they are different. Shiva is Krishna, he is Mahavishnu. He is Vishnu Tattva in one sense, but at the same time he is not. And so is the case with his consort. Rama, she expands as Uma, Durga Devi. Durga Devi is her official form when she is engaging in official activities, but it is Uma as the consort of Shiva. She has many different expansions, and it is extraordinarily complex even to think of the activity that goes on in managing the material universe, but she is in charge of the material universe. So there is a prototype of Lord Shiva, and that prototype is Lord Sadashiva, and he exists in the spiritual sky. Sadashiva and Mahavishnu are one and the same. And it is Sadashiva who glances, practically expands, and he comes as Shiva into the material nature. It is his consort, Sadashiva's consort, Sri Ramadevi, who comes as Uma into material nature. So Krishna does not come in touch with material nature. There is no question of him coming in touch with material nature. Lord Shiva is also not affected by material nature. He is not. If he were to be affected by material nature, he would not be able to control material nature. Material nature is subservient to him. He is the controller. He is the Purusha. She is Prakriti. Right? So he controls. How many births does Srimati Parvati Devi, she takes just to become, many years of penance just to become his consort. He is not moved. He is completely unmoved by her, and she is the most beautiful personality imaginable in the material universes. He is completely unmoved. He is an ascetic. Completely. He is not controlled by her in any aspect. Control means being moved, being enamored. Right? There is control. If there is any aspect of anyone which attracts us and we gain pleasure, we are controlled. Right? We become controlled when we are enamored. If there is no enamored situation, there is absolutely no question of being controlled by material nature. No aspect of material nature can bewilder Lord Shiva. It does not. He is Atmaram. He is satisfied within himself. He is not in touch with material nature. When he comes in touch with material, when he comes in touch with Mohini Murti, it is seen, Shiva got bewildered. And then Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that his bewilderment was not because it was a woman, it was because it was Vishnu. It was Krishna, it was Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu Tattva can bewilder Shiva, not material nature, not Jiva Tattva, not Shakti Tattva. It cannot bewilder Shiva. It is only because it is Vishnu. It was because it was Krishna, and it was an expansion of Krishna who comes as Mohini Murti. Shiva gets bewildered. Shiva gets bewildered because there was a personality there who was superior to him, who could control him. Shiva cannot be bewildered by material nature. So one has to realize, when Krishna wants to come in touch with material nature, it is Shiva. Very powerful. He is as good as Krishna, but he is not Krishna. Because he is Krishna's expansion, he is Balaram's expansion. Balaram's expansion, but then he is in the mood of servant of Balaram. He is constantly meditating on Balaram. Ananta specifically. He is constantly meditating on Sankarshan. That's his mood. You always see Lord Shiva sitting down in meditation. He is meditating on Ananta. He is meditating on Sankarshan. And then the motivation for destruction comes from Ananta. The motivation for destruction comes from Ananta. The motivation for bestowing blessings come from Ananta, because Ananta is Guru. He is Adi Guru. And Shiva is the spiritual master of the whole universe. He is the spiritual master of the whole universe, Shiva. How? Ananta destroys. He is imperative to destroy. Shiva destroys ignorance as well. Both. There are personalities who are eternally attracted to Krishna, Shiva. They are his eternal associates. They are a part of his entourage. They are a part of his group. You give them any other option, they would not take it because they are eternally attracted to him. They would be with him. They are his servants. Right? So there are those who are connected to him in that manner. Like there are personalities who are eternally attracted to Lord Narasimhadev. They are eternally attracted to Lord Kurma. They are eternally attracted to Lord Ananta. They are different personalities. So different personalities get attracted based on their motivation. So Lord Shiva has his own group. So one has to understand what his position is. And what is his position? His position is he is in the mood of being a servant of Balaram and Krishna. That's his mood. Balaram derives satisfaction only by serving Krishna. He has no source of any other pleasure. Balaram's servant, Lord Shiva, derives pleasure only by serving Krishna and Balaram, but he has no other source of pleasure. So when we do have the opportunity to serve Lord Shiva, we serve him with the knowledge that he is a servant of Krishna. He and his family are very elevated, highly positioned servants of Krishna. That is their mood. They don't have any other mood. And so when he is being served, he should be served in that manner because that's what pleases him. There should be no confusion in terms of being able to serve. But we also have to understand, there are people who are attracted to him. So we do not want to disturb those who are worshipping him as supreme. Because there are those who are attracted to him. That is the reason why even the Puranas are arranged in a manner where each of these Puranas proclaim the specific deity of the Purana as supreme. It is done to be able to instill faith in those who follow those Puranas. If suppose I am reading a book, right? And I feel that I'm gaining some knowledge saying, oh, someone else is better than the person who I'm considering as supreme, then how would I be able to surrender? So they are attracted to Tamasic Puranas. They go for the Tamasic Sutras. They go for the Tamasic Puranas. And they are attracted at that level, and they take on the attraction, and they are forced to go into that particular path. We don't disturb them. We don't disturb them. We provide knowledge of the glories of the holy name, but we don't disturb them. We provide knowledge by means of inviting them for sanghas. We give them prasadam. We give them the opportunity for association, but we do not speak against their manner of worship. Because the modes of nature, as they get elevated, they automatically would attract one to a higher level. So transcendence essentially means that you have the modes, you go from tamas to rajas to sattva, and from sattva you go to shuddha sattva. So as the internal nature of the living entity ascends, automatically they are attracted to different kinds of worship. They're attracted to different kinds of worship as they ascend. As the elevation of consciousness occurs, they are automatically attracted to a specific kind of deity. They are automatically attracted to a certain kind of worship. So what we make an attempt to do is not disturb them from the worship that they are engaging in, but help them in elevating their consciousness. We elevate their consciousness by giving them suitable instructions, by also giving them an impetus by inviting them to our programs, let them come in touch with the holy names, give them prasadam and so on and so forth, but you don't disturb their faith. Because that faith which they have is going to be critical for them to go on to the next level. Understand this. Someone has faith at a certain level. That faith is going to bring forth what? Service. That's going to bring forth some experiences. Those experiences are critical for that living entity to move on to the next level. When we go and disturb the faith of others because of our own bias or our own misunderstanding of the process, we basically are doing a disservice. So we have to be extraordinarily careful in specifically advising people on worship, on being attracted, so on and so forth. We have to be very, very strategic in our approach. We cannot be whimsical. We should not be acting in a manner which is in a hurried manner. Because their faith and their experiences are going to be critical for them to move forward. So unless you're able to give them an anchor, imagine, you're not being able to give them a parachute, but you push them off the sky. Right? You haven't given them anything else. You push them off the sky. There's absolutely nothing which they can hold on to. They land, midway, and then they completely lose everything. So it's a gradual process, and that recognition has to be there. This recognition has to be there when we are preaching, when we are talking to anyone. So if someone is engaging in the worship of the demigods, we encourage them to worship them selflessly. Because the selfless worship does not occur in passion, does not occur in tamas. It occurs in the mode of goodness. We encourage them to change their food habits. We encourage them to become more austere in worshipping that personality, because once they stop demanding things, or the demands become less frequent, automatically they become qualified to come in and become qualified for higher experiences. They become attracted to the worship of Lord Vishnu. Do we realize how critical this is? So it is just not that you go and then unplug someone from somewhere and then throw them here by destroying what they're already doing. We take them on a stage by stage basis by giving them an experience. And what is the best experience of Krishna consciousness? The best experience of Krishna consciousness is Sevon Mukhehi Jihvado. Give an experience to the tongue, because the tongue is the most difficult to control. The transcendental experience starts with the tongue. Give everyone a taste of Krishna Prasadam. Give everyone a taste of the holy names. Automatically, the seva would start. So our positioning should be on the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His mission was distributing the holy name to every street corner, to everyone, without any discrimination. So we distribute the holy name, and we encourage those who are coming in touch with the holy name to chant the holy names. We also give them Krishna Prasadam. Sevon Mukhehi Jihvado. This is our strategy. This should be our strategy. We do not do anything else, but then we ensure that they are coming in touch with Krishna through Prasadam. So the whole process of cooking Prasadam for our programs, we'll have to really focus on it. Not so much in terms of variety, more so in terms of purity of consciousness while cooking such Prasadam. So when we are engaging in making Prasadam for our programs, ensure that the bhoga is gathered very carefully. Ensure that the cooking process is taken care of where people come after chanting. They can start some minimal seva. People start and they can come and then they can chant. Right. Let them chant. Whatever be their number of rounds they do, let them come for the seva after chanting. Advise them of the importance and the extremely crucial importance of being able to serve Krishna by preparing bhoga carefully. Right. Whoever performs the role of a head cook has to be someone who is extraordinarily serious in their sadhana. Chant before you go for your service. It is as good as deity worship. Because if you are going to be offering, it does not mean Krishna accepts whatever is being offered. Krishna accepts that which is being offered with loving devotion. Krishna accepts whatever is being offered which has been cooked with care. Why should he eat anything? Does it even make sense? Do we eat anything? Partially salted, improperly salted, too much pepper. Do we accept it? Do we accept old food? Do we accept food that's late? We don't accept any of those. We have set standards for ourselves which are like super high in terms of enjoying. Why would we expect that Krishna will accept anything and everything that is being offered to him? The answer is no. So the whole process of the seva, sevon mukha jihvado, if we have responsibility to provide souls with the experience of coming in touch with Krishna Prasadam, we have to be super careful in terms of ingredients, super careful in terms of consciousness. This is super important. Because we are trying to act on the strategy given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is saying, Sevon Mukhehi Jihvado. The Acharyas are saying, this is exactly what you need to do. You have to start with the transcendental experience of coming in touch with Prasadam. Then how much focus are you going to be putting in terms of cooking? It can be a very simple Prasadam. It can be khichdi, it can be papad. But great care. Great care in arranging. Great care in ingredients. So it is not that you have to have 10 different varieties for Sevon Mukhehi Jihvado to happen. It has to be simple, it has to be properly done, and that is more than adequate. Srila Prabhupada held a standard of cooking prasadam, which was super big. In those days, I was talking to Maharaj, Janananda Maharaj, Goswami Maharaj. And while I was talking to him, he was explaining the standard it was in the early 70s, when Prabhupada was in the planet. So there used to be such extraordinary care taken in not only preparing a variety, and the variety was, it was very opulent prasadam in our Sunday feast. It was also very carefully done. The devotees wanted whoever came in, the guests, to experience the highest. So the puris, for instance, they are very attractive when they are puffed up. So they used to have containers which would not collapse the puris. Can you imagine the amount of preparation that used to go in and just making puris was such that, oh, let me make puris so that they remain puffed. So that people, when they see it, they become attracted. Sabjis, 2 different kinds of sabjis, pakoras, so on and so forth, halwa. Everything was done with great care purely because Prabhupada emphasized the fact that prasadam is super important. It is super important in our whole process. But more important, before it becomes prasadam, it is bhoga. So bhoga is super important. How it's being cooked, how it's being offered is super important. And then we start chanting. So these are the 2 processes for us to be able to bring souls in touch with the movement. These are our bullets. These are our most extraordinary transcendental weapons that have been given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for us to be able to conquer the world. How simple is this process? Eat prasadam and chant. Eat prasadam and chant. And every program we arrange, we work on arranging for good prasadam, simple prasadam, but cooked with great care. And we also arrange for ensuring that they come in touch with the holy names. So this is our simple strategy. Everything else that goes on is to supplement and is to foster this strategy. So if we are talking in a class, we are supposed to talk in such a way that people would be encouraged to give up their unwanted desires and at the same time take on the chanting of the holy names. So everything has to support the strategy given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is the whole purpose of this movement. There should be no ambiguity. Right? So that's exactly what we need to do. So the experience of transcendence that comes in is what leads to higher and higher and higher experiences as people move from one level of faith to the other. They take on service based on that level of faith, and then they start acting on its service. And when they start acting and they start taking on the service, they automatically make progress. They automatically make progress. So there's an extraordinary focus in our movement. So we have to remember that when we are going on seva, remember this. That seva is a super important seva because the effort and the time that we put in that seva can practically transform the hearts of souls who are coming in touch with it. It's very important. If you look at the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you find so many instances of devotees cooking very elaborate feasts and inviting other devotees and ensuring that they have experiences. Very elaborate. So everything in our movement surrounds around Sevonmukhehi Jivado. We have to give opportunity for that particular seva. Srila Prabhupada used to say, there really is a need for anything else, there wouldn't be a need for anything else. All we have to do is just chant. But to facilitate the chanting, we build temples. To facilitate the chanting, we preach. To facilitate the chanting, we do everything else. All we need to do is chant because that's the fundamental process which is given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is the fundamental process of coming in touch with Krishna. We cannot come in touch with Krishna in this yuga through any other process. We come in touch with Krishna through the chanting of the holy names. And Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, right, Golokera Premadana Harinam Sankirtan. It descends from Goloka, enters into the mind, and then dances on a purified tongue. And the tongue is purified by coming in touch with Krishna Prasadam. So we prepare the ground for the holy names to dance by ingesting and absorbing only Krishna Prasadam. The nourishing of the body has to happen based on whether it has come in touch with Krishna. This is keeping Krishna in the center. This is 101, right? Why are we making it any more complicated than this is? This is keeping Krishna in the center starts with our eating habit. Are we keeping Krishna in the center firmly by coming in touch with Krishna through prasadam? Because any other exercise is only an exercise of giving pleasure to our senses. Our senses are coming into the center. Are we exclusively focusing only on honoring Krishna prasadam? That is keeping Krishna in the center. if we have the ability to practice only honoring Krishna Prasadam, remember this principle. If we have the ability to practice, and everyone has the ability, if we have the discipline, we have the desire to take on Krishna consciousness at a higher level, we take it on by coming in touch with Krishna Prasadam and saying, take a vow for the next 1 month, for the next 1 year, I'm not going to touch anything which is not cooked and offered to Krishna. Take a vow. You do this for 1 year and chant your minimum rounds, whatever you have taken up. Not even 16. If you've taken up 4, if you've taken up 2, 1. Take a vow that you will not touch anything other than Krishna Prasadam. If you honor, you will honor after offering. And then come back and then tell us what your experiences were, because this is the word of the Acharyas. Sevon Mukhehi Jihvadao is given by the Acharyas. Why are we so doubtful about the words of the Parampara? Why are we pretending to be the followers of the Parampara while we have so many doubts? This is ridiculous. Right? If you're not following the Parampara, which means that you have doubts and we are doubting. And then Krishna says, for a doubting man, there's neither peace in this world nor the next. There's no question of any peace, any progress. Right? So do we understand how we come in touch with transcendence? Are we ready to take on a vow? All we are saying is eat well. I'm making it sound it's like a vow. You have to take an oath. Like you're going to go away and get killed or something like that, like the army. All we're saying is, you're going to be eating well. You're going to make sure that whatever you're eating is arranged in such a way that it's giving pleasure to Krishna's senses first. That is keeping Krishna in the center. By that practice, we will have experiences. Those experiences will lead to trust. It would lead to faith and deeper faith and higher experiences. See, such a fundamental concept. Why is it being overlooked? Because of its simplicity. Right. We overlook something because it's simple, because we have complex minds. We are attracted to things that are very complex. Oh, someone talks about some other process which is super complicated, we are attracted. But here's the process given by Acharyas. They're saying, oh, go to the supermarket, buy whatever you need to buy, and then offer it to Krishna after carefully cooking it, and then honor. And then take this particular oath that you will not touch anything unless it's being offered to Krishna. We are not even precluded from eating on Ekadasi. Oh, Ekadasi is coming. That's such an austerity. It's amazing. No one is even preventing us from eating on Ekadasi. It's just a different kind of food for a change. Right? It is different kind of prasadam for a change, and people eat quite opulently even on Ekadasis. They have a big fare. So there is no restriction whatsoever in the practice of Krishna consciousness for us to be able to make progress. Everything is pakka, it's arranged. Just that there's something going on where we are not following our instructions. So the label has instructions. How do you expect the product to work if the instructions are not followed? Such a fundamental instruction to abstain from, food which is not offered. Why? Because Krishna is not in the center. There you are going against Krishna's words in the 3rd chapter in a fundamental way on a daily basis, and somehow expecting that there would be a progress and understanding of transcendental knowledge, of understanding who we are. How do we expect that we are going to understand who we are, who is Krishna, and the relationship if we are not even following the rules that are given in the previous chapter, which is the 3rd chapter? Karma Yoga, action. Right? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. If I do not know how to keep Krishna in the center while performing those activities, there's no question of transcendental knowledge. Why is it so difficult to understand? Why is it that we're even missing this part? Krishna is not saying anything else. He's not talking about anything else. He's giving this very fundamental instruction. If we do that, try it out for a year or so. Try it out for a month. Try it out for 2 months. And you will understand how to overcome the so-called practical challenges posed by the mind. The challenges are posed by the mind. The mind is telling us, do this and do that. Right? In the army, it is said that for commandos, right, for special forces, those fellows in special forces, they are trained not to eat. They are trained to live off of nature. Of course, they're trained how to catch snakes and everything and cut them up and eat. That's a different issue. But they're trained to live off of nature. Fundamentally, they're put through a circumstance where they can survive. They can survive without any proper food. Because that's the nature of their job. They're being put into situations where they have to survive without any organized meal, anything like that. And they're given this special training on how you survive off of nature. The sadhus in Himalayas and Vrindavan and so on and so forth, they depend completely on Krishna. They step out of their caves, they go search for specific fruits, they know which herb to have, they know exactly which is proper, which would work for them, which will not work for them. They know exactly all the herbs to treat themselves. They're completely in tune with nature. So in other words, we are trainable. We are absolutely trainable. We have no excuse whatsoever to say that it's not possible. The problem lies with the fact that we do not have a desire. If there is a strong desire, then it would be possible. If there isn't a strong desire, then we will have a problem. Do we understand the principle? So first come in touch with Krishna by engaging our senses. And the first sense that is engaged is a sense of eating. Purify that. Purify the process of eating and everything else will take care. We are basically nourishing our existence. There was my spiritual master, he developed melanoma, but then it was not cancerous, it was benign. And he had a very big bump on his foot. We used to see it, we used to wonder. Right on his ankle. He used to have a bump, almost like the size of a lemon. It grew over a period of time. And that was benign, actually. It was benign. It was not malignant. It grew malignant after some time. But then initially, he tried having it treated in Brazil. Apparently, there was a natural healer. He was gifted, and his healing propensity was not Western medicine. It was, he had some special powers. And everyone used to visit the healer in Brazil to cure diseases. So when my spiritual master visited, he also found one more sannyasi from ISKCON in the same place. He was also there and waiting. And then that personality told my Guru Maharaj, saying that if you had not eaten prasadam, this would have become cancerous long back. It stays malignant or benign based on how it's being nourished. Right? How something is being nourished. See, how can order be preserved? Do you agree that order needs to be preserved with consciousness? Higher consciousness would be able to preserve order. Lower consciousness, fundamentally tamasic personalities, they're dirty. They're completely disorganized. Higher levels and higher levels of consciousness allows them to be clean, allows them to be simple, allows them to be completely organized. Right. What happens when there is cancer? When there is cancer, there is a situation where the process of creation and destruction have gone amok. Cells are being created, but then old cells have to be destroyed. That particular process has gone completely awry. Right. When there is a higher level of consciousness, then there is a possibility of being able to function even with all these diseases and so on and so forth, because a higher level of consciousness of the soul would pulsate throughout the body, and that consciousness and the prana is being spread throughout. So it is able to maintain a higher level. So the healer was informing my spiritual master, saying, this is your karmic balance. Basically, since you are a transcendental personality, you are spiritual, the body is not getting destroyed as much as it would be if you were not spiritual. We've given this example before. There were this group of monks who were in Greece, and then they'd taken oath saying that they will not step out and come in touch with material nature. They used to get inside caves, and the caves used to be sealed, and there would be a hole through which they would receive daily rations, and it used to be vegetables. when they used to leave their bodies and their bodies used to be taken out, the body, even after several days, used to be very supple, still soft. The body would not have gone into decomposition. It still stays fresh. It has not decomposed even though it's been dead for a while. Which is quite fascinating. And it is given is because their existence was spiritual. Since their existence was spiritual, the prana, which is in this area, the living force, is energized by a tremendous amount of spiritual force. The consciousness in this region. Right? This is the region of the heart. The soul exists in the region of the heart. And the heart is pumping blood throughout the body. So when the heart is being energized, and the region of the heart is being energized by transcendence, then transcendence spreads throughout the body, which is above material nature. So destruction and everything does not take place in the same pace as it would if it were to happen in material nature. Do we realize? It's completely different. So you have the Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. He's right here. He was 140 years old. 150 years old. At the time of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur found the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. He had a vision in the night. He was across and he was able to see a light and he was able to see visions and he located the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, but he wanted a confirmation. So he went there and he found a forest of tulsis. And then he wanted a confirmation, so he invited the very prominent Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who Bhaktivinoda Thakur considered as his guru. See, all these relationships, many of them are Siksha relationships. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was a Siksha guru of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a Siksha guru of Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj. So he considered that this is a very predominant personality, I must invite him and I must see what his reaction was. He called him. So he called him and he came there and he used to be 140 years old, where he used to be transported in a basket. And his disciple, who was 80 years old, used to carry him on his back. Can you imagine? His disciple was 80 years old. He used to carry his guru in a basket on his back. And you can imagine how strong the 80-year-old disciple must have been to carry his guru on the back. So he came with his disciple in a basket. Right. There are some extraordinary accounts of experiences with Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So he came to the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, and the moment he came to the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was 140 years old, completely bent, completely, in a situation. You know what happens to the body. The body starts becoming small and everything starts setting in, and he was completely in a bent position in the basket. He jumps out of the basket and starts dancing. Because he comes to the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. In ecstasy, he starts dancing. These are extraordinary transcendental personalities, but then we see that their bodies did not operate the way any other body would, because those bodies have been 100% engaged in the service of the Lord. That's the reason why we erect samadhis for exalted devotees. Samadhi is erected specifically because that body is not material. It's been used in the service of the Lord exclusively. So when you use your body in the service of the Lord, that starts with the experience of eating. That is why it is said, Sevon Mukhehi Jivado. You chant, but before you chant, you nourish your body with Krishna Prasadam. That would give you the ability to chant. That will give you the ability to serve. That will give you the ability to focus. So we'll stop right here and read the verse. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakritim swam adishtatva sambhavami atmamayaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So the position of millennium here, millennium essentially does not mean that year 2000 is a millennium, once in 1,000 years. The word millennium here is one occurrence in the 4 cycles of yugas. So there are 1,000 cycles of yugas that take place during the day of Lord Brahma, and there is one occurrence where the Lord appears. Right. So there is Nrsimha avatar, there is Rama avatar, there is Krishna avatar. Right now, as we speak, the Lord is having his pastimes on some other planet, which is an Earth planet in some other material universe. It is occurring because different planetary systems have their own different yuga cycles. In fact, there are also different versions of the Srimad Bhagavatam suited on the specific pastimes that have occurred in those particular realms. Different universes have different kind of situations. Even while we read our Bhagavatam, we see instances and descriptions which does not seem to correlate. It is because it is a part of a different paradigm. Transcendental literature spans across different universes. Right. So these instances do occur. So Krishna appears every millennium, 1,000 cycles of yugas, he appears in the Dwapara, and there are pastimes that are occurring in one day of Brahma. Right. So he says, I appear in every millennium in my transcendental form. My transcendental form. So further down in the 4th chapter, he starts explaining why he appears. But here he says, I appear every millennium. And in a body, he says, the nature of transcendence is a body that does not deteriorate. It does not deteriorate. It is not subject to the motions of time. It is not subject to what happens because, time moves, the clock moves. The clock moves from one point to the other. It's not subject to any of that. He is not subject to time. Prapancha. Right. He is not subject to it. He is time. So that's the statement of Krishna. So we quickly looked at today the nature of transcendence. We looked at the fact that we will have to establish certain procedures for us to be able to come in touch with transcendence. The best way to come in touch with transcendence is to take on a very fundamental process of existence, which is eating, and constantly keep it in touch with Krishna. Right. We also spoke of the fact that one who comes in touch with material nature will take on such qualities. So the moment we come in touch with material nature, in the process of eating, we also come in touch with qualities of material nature. We acquire those qualities. And what is the quality of material nature? The quality of material nature is to be destroyed. So we acquire the qualities and qualify ourselves for being destroyed by coming in touch with material nature. We acquire the quality of transcendence when we come in touch with transcendence, which gives us an ability for us to be able to come in touch with transcendence. Right. So we also requested that consider your fundamental day. Your fundamental day, there are activities of eating. Everyone eats. Please dovetail those activities of eating to Krishna. That is 101 of keeping Krishna in the center. Everything else will happen if we do that properly. Because our body and our consciousness, everything is dependent on how it's being nourished. So once we keep Krishna in the center in the process of eating, we automatically develop the proper consciousness. Similarly, those of us who are in the mode or we have the service of preaching. Preaching means cooking. Right? We are cooking Krishna Prasadam so that we could offer it to the devotees. So that they could come in touch with Krishna. Sevonmukhe Jivado. We focus on entering the kitchen. We focus on entering that entire process with great care. It is not so much the variety, it is more the consciousness. So we focus on chanting nicely before we engage in that seva. We focus on chanting nicely before we even engage and go and buy vegetables. So that's super important seva. So we also understand that part. Right? So we'll stop right here and see if you have any questions. Prabhupada ki. See, again, the more and more we meditate on keeping Krishna in the center, we start also understanding what he prefers. The intelligence would be given to us on what he would prefer. What we arrange is based on our preference and our senses. The more and more we start understanding what he prefers, we automatically would change and we start improvising on it. In Hartford, in the Hartford temple, there is Mother Jiva. She is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, her husband Pyari Mohan Prabhu, Mother Jiva. I remember because I was in Hartford for a while, every Sunday feast, she had such high standards, she would not allow anyone who was not initiated to even offer any kind of cooking service because she was cooking for Jagannath. Extraordinarily nice person, but her standards were very high. She used to cook the entire course all by herself. And sometimes there used to be one Mataji who was initiated who used to help. She used to cook the entire course all by herself. And it was not ordinarily done. 2 sabjis, she maintained Prabhupada standards. 2 sabjis, puri, pakora, halwa, rice. And I would say she's probably the best cook on the East Coast, wherever. The prasadam used to be so elaborate and so carefully done. Whether she's sick or whatever be the case, she used to offer a full feast to the devotees. Extraordinary variety, and since she was very advanced in the sense that, extraordinary personality, the food used to be excellent. Jagannath used to accept it. The deities there in the temple are Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra. Jagannath used to accept it because she was very aptly serving Jagannath and her mood was such. So the more and more and more we tune ourselves in understanding what is Krishna's pleasure, the more and more the super soul starts revealing the interests. Krishna says that remembrance and forgetfulness come from me. So the more and more we develop a desire of wanting to serve, he starts indicating how he wants to be served. Then we would start making and becoming very discriminate on whether we should buy this, buy that, we should do this, we should not do that. And I have seen it happen. People who are focused, they can do it. I had the very good fortune of growing up in a home where my grandmother, at the age of 70, I remember, she used to step out early in the morning at 3:30, go to the well, draw water all by herself, have a bath. She used to be completely independent, wash her own clothes. My mother was not initiated, so she would not eat from my mother. So she used to cook her own food. At the age of 70, she used to have a little corner. She used to cook her own food. She used to offer to her deities, the Shilas. She used to worship some Shaligram. And then she used to honor. Throughout the day, she will maintain very high standards in terms of what she can come in touch with, what she will not come in touch with, and so on and so forth. Very pious personality. Once we visited Pandharpur in Maharashtra, right? And I remember, I was probably in the first grade. I still remember vividly. We visited Pandharpur, and in Pandharpur, she basically would not eat anywhere. So my father was in the railways at the time, so he had the ability to arrange for certain things. So she had her own little 2 pots, and he arranged for a stove. So she made her own chapatis right there, had my father bring some milk, because milk is pure, little sugar, that was prasad, finished. And she's 70, 72 years old. Wherever she goes, she used to be completely independent. No one could wash her clothes. No washing machine. And then traditional families, women used to wear saris which go from one end to the other. I don't know if you ever noticed. Brahminical families, the sari used to be of only certain kind of saris they would wear, because that would allow them to worship the deities properly. Because, certain kind of clothes, they do not absorb contamination. So there was some design. And the sari would go from one end to the other, heavy saris. She used to do the washing herself. She would cook the entire boga for the Lord. Right? Everything taken care of. Nothing. Completely independent. Except for the last 15 days of her life, when, last 1 week or so she was in a coma. I remember. She was completely independent. So what I am saying is that, I had the good fortune that samskara, it's possible. You can be 70, you can be infirm, you can be old, you can step out in cold water, 3:30 in the morning, 4, you could draw water, you could have a bath. I was able to observe these things even though I had no respect for it those days. Honestly, I had no respect for it, but I was able to see those samskaras were in my heart that, oh, this is possible. You can go and then you can carry and you can maintain your standards wherever you go. No prasadam, nothing, no food will be eaten without offering. Otherwise, she would just fast. Right? So I had the good fortune of being exposed to it because the samskara is there, even though I could not appreciate it when I was younger. So now I'm able to realize that there was a great personality, quite an inspiration. Right? My aunts always used to tell me that, she would possibly be very pleased if she were to see me at least doing a little bit now. Because that time she had never, I was a different personality. So she saw me as a different person that time. Right? So quite fascinating to see how old people in India, traditional families, they still maintain their standards. They go around, maybe not anymore, but I've seen it happen. So it's not impossible that if you can be like that at the age of 70, wherever you go, you have a certain standard. Right? Srila Prabhupada, he used to cook. Right? He used to cook. Have you read? In Pennsylvania, he came with 3 different, those vessels, and so beautifully organized. You'll see pictures where vegetables, rice, and chapati, everything gets taken place at the same time. Dal, okay, it's done. And Prabhupada had a standard, Mataji's specifically. Prabhupada's standard was very clear. He said, deity worship and cooking for the deity all should take place in 1 hour. That was Prabhupada's standard. You cook and you worship the deities and everything is done in 1 hour because we are a preaching movement. So we cannot be in the kitchen for 6 hours. So you prepare yourself to preach. 1 hour you offer and you cook. And Prabhupada used to make such an elaborate meal in that half hour and then offer it to the deities. Everything used to happen in 1 hour. That was Prabhupada's standard for everybody. He said, yeah, he used to do it in 1 hour. It will get compressed. No, it would get compressed. It takes 45 minutes because our span of attention is very poor. If you have been worshipping the deity for a very long time and we move from tamas to rajas to transcendence or to at least mode of goodness, higher levels, our ability to focus and do one after the other offerings is very good. So it takes practice. It just compresses, it collapses itself. Any deity worship activity, very elaborate deity worship, it can collapse itself as the sadhaka becomes more disciplined. So Prabhupada used to say that 1 hour, do what you're supposed to do. Become efficient, plan. In 1 hour you finish your cooking, you offer it to the deities and you're done. So because every temple has to make bhoga offerings. So that bhoga offering cannot be 3 hours. The same pujari has to cook bhoga and he also has to do deity worship. How can he compress all of this in that narrow period of time? So Prabhupada set those standards and devotees used to do that because everybody used to leave for preaching after some time and they used to come back again. Right. So what we are seeing is Srila Prabhupada set the standard. He was here in Butler, Pennsylvania. He accepted the circumstances. Yes, there was meat in the refrigerator, but then he used to keep things in the corner. He used to manage. He never let go of his standard. Right? When he came here to New York, he didn't have a place to stay. He used to sleep in a place and then go to another place to have a bath because he used to sleep in an office. And he used to go to another place to have a bath. Right? There were 20 young people who used to come almost every day and Prabhupada used to feed them. On an average, he used to make 150 chapatis because they could eat. Right? Each of them could eat 8-10 chapatis because they were young. They could eat sabji, they could eat, and it was Prabhupada who was cooking. It was extraordinarily delicious. They used to eat and he used to feed them. So all of this used to be accomplished within a very reasonable amount of time. Very simple cooking, but with a highly focused seva, and it was Sevon Mukhehi Jivado. He came and he brought them in touch. So we have quite a few examples from our own parampara on how the devotees acted and what they did for us to be able to learn how the Sevon Mukhehi Jivado can be adapted to our modern day life. If you think about it, if you put in energy, you will be able to achieve it. If you do not have the desire and you don't want to put in energy, you will not be able to. It has not become a priority. Giving pleasure to Krishna's senses is not a priority. You will not be able to do this. If that becomes a priority, then automatically I will eat only after Krishna eats. Why? Because Krishna's senses have to be given pleasure. That will occur. Do we understand? Anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki